Coach, good to see you.
Man, great to be back on.
All right, give me are we done with the summer vacation? Where we been? What's going on? What do you do in that part of the Midwest?
Well, we do take our little windows where we can get away a little bit. I've been able to and our whole staff. It's been nice that we can kind of circulate in the summer and get with families and get away a little bit. But after the 4th of July, it's just all downhill, man. So we've had a little bit of downtime since always have the camp season that's pretty busy, and then we get a little break. But it's kind of fun to get away. But it's really getting exciting to be back here and get going.
As I'm in Nashville with the offices, but is 7-on-7 and those types of camps are they pretty popular in and around the St. Louis area?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty fortunate here. We to host probably one of the largest mega camps in the country, and it just goes to show just the great talent in the St. Louis metro area. There's we have over 2,000 kids that come here to our campus for a mega camp, and there's 400 coaches. I mean, it's really become a big deal. The 7-on-7 stuff, that's the other thing, is kind of like I think it's football's way in high school to get as close to, like you see about AAE basketball and things like that. It's the 7-on-7 camps and leagues have really grown through the last few years, and it's a good avenue to really get, especially skill kids. You get to really see kind of kids live and how they play. And ultimately, I think every coach will tell you they still want to put on that actual film of the game. It kind of gives you a little look at kids' athleticism and things they can do. But ultimately, it still comes down to how do you play the game.
Well, you're going to start with a big game. Going to go to Lawrence, Kansas, and take on Lance Leipold and KU. Then you're going to have a couple of really, I think, interesting games, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of barometer games for you and your program with Central Arkansas and Missouri State before you get into conference action. Kind of take us through that, the whole schedule, but in particular the first three that sets up the conference schedule.
I don't think there's any doubt we have a really tough non-conference schedule. We have a tough conference schedule. I mean, you can see the quality of our conference quality that they of opponents that we'll have in conference, but we got a few weeks before we even get to that. So, obviously, good opportunity for our players to, I've known Lance a long time, back when he was at Nebraska Omaha. I was at Northern Colorado. We were young coaches. We got to know each other back then. Really proud of what Lance has done in his career, and what he's doing is amazing at Kansas. I think 2 years ago when he took over, that is when we first talked about scheduling this game. I was hoping he'd wait about 3 or 4 more years before he got the program to where it's at now. But I'm so proud of him and what he's done. So, it's a great opportunity for our kids. This is the first time Lindenwood's history will play an FBS game. We've always played games levels up, when we were Division II. And, so we've had games and experience of playing at higher levels, but this will be the first time we play an FBS game. And so, yeah. And then of course, coming out of that, you can't really rest easy. I mean, we've got Central Arkansas right after that, which, we didn't get to play last year. We played them the year before. We kind of snuck out of their place with the win, and I know they're going to be remembering that. We were an underdog in that game and pulled off a win, so they're going to be highly motivated to come here and do the same thing for us. And then, of course, in St. Thomas, same deal. We got St. Thomas and Missouri State before we get to conference play. And obviously, Missouri State being Missouri Valley school, I mean, that's a tough league. I mean, and so, and they're a tough program. So, this non-conference doesn't get easier at all.
Now, let's jump ahead. The Kansas game, and we'll move on. That's played at Arrowhead, right? Because they've got their scheduling. Where is that game? Or is that going to be played at one of the soccer stadiums?
Yeah, that's going to be where the KC Sporting plays there in Kansas City over there. I think they're playing some of their Big 12 or their conference games on the at Arrowhead. And some of them are going to be the soccer stadium. I think I think that's still going to be a fun. Obviously, part of the the experience to your players is being able to go over to places and play in environments like it, at Kansas and things like that. I still think when they move that venue due to their construction of their stadium, I still think it's going to be a great environment. It's I've been in that soccer stadium. It's, they're circled around you, right on top of you. It's, 22,000 people. I'm sure I've heard it's going to be sold out. So it'll be a fun atmosphere, regardless that it's not at Kansas.
And one other scheduling thing, non-conference, but give us the genesis of the Minnesota agreement with Row the Boat and PJ Fleck.
Yeah, well, Jason, our athletic director, Jason Coomer's done a great job. Just, the scheduling, obviously that was new when we moved into this league. So many people have, I found it at this level, schedules are scheduled out so far in advance, and you've got to, and so we've been really fortunate to be able to pick up some of these games. They're great exposure. It's great revenue for our program. I got to deal with Lance in Kansas right now, man. I haven't even thought about Minnesota, but we got a few years to get there. But it's still, I think it's exciting that teams are open to wanting to play us. Come here, Minnesota comes down here all the time for the mega camp. Their programs here a lot. It's fun. I just really credit Jason doing a great job of helping us piece together our schedule for the next few years, because that's really been the hardest task when we came into this league, is finding games, just because everybody had them pretty solidified for a few years.
So 2 seasons in this league, what are your impressions?
Great league, great coaches. We've really, I just think I'm pretty transparent. I think, talking to our team in this off season, everything, it's, we have to start doing our part. We can't, as far as really feeling like we're solidified in this league. I think it's weird sometimes when you've kind of been the new guy coming in, you're kind of saying, hey, where do we fit in and things like that. And that starts with, being a credible, competitive team in this league. And that's the next step that we have to take. I think you could say that we've been competitive in some games. We've won some games, but, I think, our objective now is to take the next step. What we've really going to try to discipline ourselves this year to really take one game at a time, 1 week at a game, one week at a time, one day at a time. But that's kind of gets cliched a lot. But I think you hear that expression a lot, one quarter at a time, all these things. I get it. I think, but I tell you, it's feeling a little bit more familiar now. You kind of starting to get to know the teams more. It was weird the first year when you're playing a team that maybe you've never seen, you've never played against. You go into that game. Now we have some familiarity with some of the teams. We kind of have an idea of what to expect, kind of what their team's like, and I think that helps a little bit. And so I think we feel a little bit more comfortable going into this season now that we feel like we've got some of that experience.
Coming off a difficult season last year, what do you think is important with this off-season period, getting ready for the new season, being a part of what you indicated as contributing to the league? What's the important element you kind of focused on in the preseason and the off-season?
Well, the off-season, I think this is every coach is going to say this because it doesn't matter what level, but really the success of your team is really based on how much quality depth you have on that team. I think on your team, I think that was one of the things that we felt like we were an extremely young team last year. It's encouraging because we had a lot of kids playing for the first time. We kind of went through a pretty, just for us, everybody faces injury bugs. I think for us, it was probably the most, within our program's history, in my coaching history, I've never had the type of injury ridden season that we had last year, coming off of 23 surgeries, and some of those guys were cleared for spring. Some of them were still coming back. But what I did notice, I think through our recruiting, we did go into the portal a little bit, to get some fixes in our program that we needed, and especially from a depth standpoint. I think that's what hurt us last year, especially the second half of the season. Honestly, we were just running out of guys. I think that was one focus that we felt like we've got a lot of experience coming back. We're an extremely young team. I think we're we're starting to look a lot more like the guys that we're playing, the teams that we're playing physically. And but we've added some great depth, and I think that's going to help us get through, because that really was probably what hurt us a little bit more last year than I really realized.
Darren Fugit at tight end and Devon Edwards at linebacker, two that are joining us today. A word or two about those young men.
Well, what I like to do is when we select guys that we want to that are going to join us, we grab the strength coach and we grab both coordinators and we sit down and say, okay, what two guys are going to represent our team, and those two names, Devin and Fugit, they both were the first names that popped up because it's all about kind of how they've led in this offseason. Darren and Devin have both nagged injuries last year, had to push through. Devin was in a situation where he couldn't, so he feels even hungrier. And I've been really proud of those two guys' off-season leadership. I think culture is a big deal in this program. I was looking at, when you're looking at a season like you had last year, honestly, we haven't had a lot of losing seasons, and that's hard to, you want to try to figure out what can you learn from, and to see that we had so many guys stick around, we didn't lose guys in the portal. They're hungry. They want to come back and avenge that. And the leadership of those two guys, that's why all three of those coaches, from our strength coach in the off season, just immediately, those were the two names that popped up. Leadership's all about credibility. It's not about speeches. It's not about words you say. It's about credibility. And those two are huge examples of that.
I've got to ask a final hard-hitting question.
Uh-oh.
The game day beads worn around your neck.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So Gareth Warren, one of our great players, starting offensive tackles from Hawaii. His parents every year come over. They get to spend, sometimes a block of a couple weeks where they can see two games. And Gareth's family, one of the most generous families you have. And we do have several of our players that are from the islands and have that background that it's kind of an honorarium to them of, their culture and everything. And I think the last few years, the last game of the season, when they come, I proudly wear those in honor of our kids from the islands, and it's a tribute to them. And I think it's hard because to get the authentic part of this message, but when they put those on you and they really tell the history of that and what that means in their culture, I always hope when I go out on the sideline and people in the stands, or if they see it on TV, it's never meant to be anything as a showboating type thing. It is truly, after you hear those words and from a parent and what that means, it's with great honor. And some of our other, I know Coach Johnson, our O-line coach who coaches Gareth, they did the same thing. Our coordinator, it's just a really special thing, and that's kind of why it's become kind of a tradition as an honorarium.
Well, it's made its way to the football webpage, and as a media guy that kind of geeks over that, I had to ask that question. So.
Yeah, and they still hang here in my office. I mean, even though they dry up, it's still a beautiful, beautiful thing. Yeah, but a great message behind it.
Jed, great to see you again. Best of luck to you, and we'll see you along the road.
Awesome. Great being on with you again.